Week booster parent. If you have a knowledge of Mrs. Ank and Mr. Anderson, the English teachers and magicians behind Writers Week, or an English teacher who brought you here, let me have another round of applause for them and a big thank you. Ooh, a little more than that. Come on, you're Writers Week. Welcome to day 2 of Writers Week. We are in for such a treat today. If you are loving it, which I'm sure you also have opportunity to get some swag. We have books for sale for $10 after that. Potentially you can get autographs, we'll talk about soon. There are also buttons, Writers Week buttons, 3 for $1 that you can get. They look awesome. You can see on your English teacher. A lot of us are wearing them. And there are posters created by a Fremd student that look incredible, also $10. So you can get some Writers Week swag afterwards. But first, I would love to introduce you to Mark Oshiro. I had the pleasure, and he had possibly the fear, of meeting me in Baltimore. I was there for a conference at a reading of, who knows who Elizabeth Acevedo is? She is the author of Poet X. If you read the Poet X, handful of us I know have read and loved this book. So I'm there sitting, and in walks Mark and Nick Stone, author of Dear Martin. So me and my other English teacher friends, we're flipping out, we're freaking out. And do we go up and say hi? Do we not? Ultimately, Mark started to walk and got to the escalator, went down, and I ran down the escalator, following after. Luckily,
you did run.
There was running, and those of you who know me, that looks awkward. But I ran, I caught up, and Mark was so wonderful and engaged us in conversation, heard about Fremd. Mark is an editor. Mark reviews items, TV shows, and books on a website. Mark reads stuff, Mark does stuff. And Mark has a debut novel that is recommended to people who love Angie Thomas's Hate You Give. Dear Martin by Nick Stone. Mark is wonderful, and we are so lucky to have them here at Writers Week today. So please welcome Mark to the stage.
I don't like this. This is real. Okay, we're good. Here's how this is going to work. I'm going to read something to all of you. I'm going to read you one page, chapter 6 of my book, Anger's a Gift. I have this thing. It has pictures. One of them is really embarrassing, and I kind of regret putting it in there. I'm going to talk about myself, why I'm a writer, why I do what I do, and then we're going to do questions. And I like to levy this threat every single time I do a visit. I did about 70 or 80 school visits last year, which is that if no one raises their hand when we get to Q&A, I'm just going to start picking random students and ask you questions. And they're going to be real awful questions. They're going to be super awkward. All right. Hi, I'm Mark. Good morning. It's so cold outside. I'm from the desert. I don't like this. Anyway, all right. Chapter 6, Anger's a Gift. Shamika's gold hoop earrings jingled as she moved her head from side to side. She let out a laugh and put a plate of biscuits on the table. Wanda, she said between breaths, your son definitely got something to say. I knew it, Moss's mama said, and she brought over a plate stacked high with chicken. He always gets all quiet when he's trying to avoid something. He sighed with exasperation. Am I always that obvious? Wanda sat down to his right and then caressed his arm. Not always, she said. But usually, Shamika blurted out, and then she and Wanda had a good laugh at that. He smiled at her and grabbed a couple of wings from the plate, then dropped them quickly because they were still hot. He hadn't seen as much of Shamika in the last few months. She'd given herself a much-needed vacation after tax season. Her afro was huge now, and he admired how well kept it was. I need a cut soon, Moss realized. His hair had started getting long on top, and he needed a touch-up to his fade. He made a mental note to hit up Martin for the weekend. So, spit it out, Moss, his mother said, breaking off a part of the biscuit that Shamika had made. What's going on? He stuck a broccoli spear in his mouth and chewed on it, his eyes locked with his mama's. Just say it. Stop delaying, he told himself. So, he said, drawing it out, his heart pumping in a familiar, flopping rhythm. I want to ask if I can go over to a friend's house Friday night. He breathed out. A new friend, I should say. Okay, his mom said. Do they live far? How long are you planning to be out? I'm going to read a little bit more. He ignored those questions and went for the bigger issue. It's a boy, Mama. It took a second for this to register. Her face was confused at first, and then the realization of what Moss meant grew, lighting up her eyes, her mouth slowly dropping open. "Oh," she said. Then, "Oh." Shamika, however, was not at all fazed. She leaned forward, her elbows on the table, a mischievous smirk on her face. "I want to know everything," she said. "What's his name? Where'd you meet him?" She paused and went quiet. "He got money?" I'm going to end right there. All right. We're going to talk about this book in a second. That scene gets really awkward really fast, and I've read that at other school visits, and it makes people squirm, and it's great. So anyway, hi, my name is Marco Shero. I'm a young adult, middle grade author. I am very excited to talk to all of you. That's me, Liz Acevedo, Gabby Rivera, two of my very good, close writer friends. So my name is Marco Shero. I like to be very upfront about these two things. I am queer, I'm Latinx, I'm an author, and I write books for kids. The reason I'm upfront about those things is, one, I grew up in a place where we did not have a GSA, we didn't have a Gay Straight Alliance, there was an LGBT club. Well, there was, and the one kid who joined it a month later got beat up. So that's it. You couldn't do this, I couldn't be who I am today, I could not be out, and so I like to come out every single time I do one of these. I think it's important because I think people need to see that there are other people like them or unlike them out in the world. The other thing I put up there is being Latinx. I like to say that I am ambiguously brown. People look at me and they like to play a game of, what country are you from? And let me just tell you, you will always lose, especially if you're the TSA. That was great, good job today, Mark. I am going to tell you a little bit about my background, but I also like being upfront about that. Part of the reason why is because of my last name. If you're familiar with that last name, you know it is Japanese. It is a very common Japanese last name. People will meet me. Actually, the first school visit I ever did was outside of Chicago, not very far from here, where a kid asked me, "Yo, why aren't you Asian?" Well, and my response was, it's not a video game. I didn't choose at the beginning. Like, it wasn't like the character creation, and I was like, Asian. That's a real dumb joke. All right, anyway. So let's talk about this, because I'm gonna explain it and back up a little bit. So how long have I wanted to be a writer? So I'm one of those rare weirdos. I knew what I wanted to be, or what I wanted to be when I got older. When I was in elementary school, I started reading by the age of 4 and started telling stories by the time I was in first grade. I read my first book intended for adults from cover to cover when I was 8 years old. I would check out the maximum amount of books at the library. For my local library, I grew up in California, and we were allowed 20 every 2 weeks. I would read 20 books every 2 weeks. I started writing in elementary school. I did not stop writing for a very long time. And if you are curious what the first book I read for adults at age 8 was, it's Stephen King's It. How many of you have read It? Yeah, you shouldn't read that when you're 8 years old. There's some things in it that I did not understand until much later. So what was I like as a teenager? So that is actually me and my identical twin brother. There is another one of me, he lives in Baltimore. So I made this slide, and I put this in here because I thought it was a cool photo. But now that it's blown up, I'm gonna walk over here. What the hell is going on with my tie? Like, where's that space? Anyway, this is how you knew I was in the closet. I didn't know how to dress. So anyway, I grew up in Riverside, California. Riverside, California is about 85, 90 miles east of Los Angeles. It's out in the desert. So again, I live in New York City now, and I liked the winter for 1 week. I hate it, it's terrible. How do any of you live here? It seems arrogant and terrible. So anyway, to explain the last name, my twin brother and I are called transracial adoptees. That means we were adopted out of the culture and ethnic group that we were born into and brought into another one. So my mom is white and my dad is Japanese and Hawaiian, which made for a very interesting upbringing. Some of it is actually in Anger's a Gift. There is a transracial adoptee character in it named Esperanza. I was the smart kid in junior high and high school. I did track, cross country. And as I say here, surprising absolutely no one, I was a giant nerd. I love Star Wars. I love science fiction. I love horror. Horror is my one absolute favorite thing in the world. But let's get to why this stuff matters. Because I could tell you my bio, who cares? Most of you are gonna forget it anyway. What I actually want to impart on everyone is why I write what I write. So I often get asked why Anger is a Gift is so, and I put it in quotes, dark. Why is it so dark, and why do I choose to write about teenagers experiencing immense hardship? We're going to talk about the book a little more specifically, but I will warn you, if you have not read it, it is not an easy read, and I knew that writing it, I knew that promoting it. Much of the book is autobiographical in some form. I borrowed from many of my experience while constructing the main character, his friends, and the world in which he lives in. When you read this, much of the school is based on the high school that I went to. I also had a very difficult upbringing and a challenging childhood, and I think there is a value to writing stories about kids facing hardships, and then this is the most important part, surviving them. Because some of the stuff that I went through when I was in high school, I didn't think I could survive because I didn't read stories. I didn't see examples of people persevering through the odds. So I dealt with things like child abuse, racism, rampant homophobia as a kid. So it always felt unfair to me when I heard adults say that kids should not read difficult books, that none of you should read challenging subjects, you shouldn't read dark things because we don't want to expose you to those sort of ideas or those experiences. Because then that left out kids like me, I didn't have a choice. I had to go through those things, and I had to experience difficult things. So more specifically, when I was 16 years old, my mom kicked me out of the house for being gay. I was homeless my entire junior year of high school. And I talk about this, and I'm open about it, because this is something that I hid for a long time, and I was very ashamed about. I think those experiences absolutely affected what sort of fiction that I write, and I think everything that I'm going to write is always going to be rooted in the stuff that I went through in high school. Because I was forced to become an adult when I was a kid. So it always feels natural to me to write about kids having to deal with very, very adult things. What I most needed when I was 16 was someone to tell me that what I was going through could be conquered. That I could be the hero of a story and that I could win in the end. So after high school, this is where you learn. Y'all know the Harry Potter houses? Gryffindor, Ravenclaw. How many Ravenclaws are here? That's not enough. How dare you? All right. I'm a Ravenclaw, but I'm a petty Ravenclaw, which means I use intellect, logic, and lots of receipts to get things done. Some of you chuckle. I literally have a folder on my computer that is just screenshots of all the terrible things I've seen people say on the internet, and I'm saving them. I don't know what for. I just know one day I'll need them. So despite the hardships I face, I can be immensely petty. So I worked extremely hard to succeed for myself, and I put myself there because that was what was so important to me, is I knew my parents did not accept my lifestyle, they didn't accept who I was, so I knew I was going to be on my own. So, very happy to tell you all that I graduated with a 4.34 GPA, and I was valedictorian. Suck it, Mom. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say that, all right, that's terrible. I was a President's Scholar at Cal State Long Beach. I actually got a full ride scholarship to Cal State Long Beach. I worked extremely hard for it. I started as an English creative writing major. I switched to political science after one semester because the writing department was a trash fire. I did not actually like it. I attended for 3.5 years, and now is where we get to another very real bit about my life. You are all looking at a college dropout, which means if you did that, who cheered? They're like, yeah, you failed. Anyway, all right. No one's ever, sorry, that took me out. No one's ever cheered when I said I dropped out of college. Good job. Proud of you. Now you're clapping, that's right. Here's the thing. That scholarship I was on, the last semester, I was one semester away from graduating. They decided that we were a bunch of freeloaders and they took away room and board. So the first day of my last semester of college, I got a bill for $9,500. And they said, you either pay this in 7 days or you have to get off campus and leave, and you can't go to school anymore. And that was a pretty easy choice because I had like 95 cents. Like I don't have $9,500. The other thing that I like talking about this is because I think there is sort of a myth about how to become a writer, which is that you have to go to college, you have to get your MFA in creative writing, and there's a very specific path, and my path was not that path at all. If you do the math, that means I did 1 semester of creative writing. So that means I am a published author with right now 3 other books under contract in the next 2 years, and I have 1 semester of training as a professional writer. So I ended up dropping out of college. I worked a bunch of odd jobs around Los Angeles. Those are some examples. Like I worked at Ticketmaster. I did a lot of editing. I was an overnight cook at a really bougie restaurant in West Hollywood where I once served the Beastie Boys, which was pretty cool. They tipped me $100 each. Good job. Good job, Beastie Boys. So this is how I got back into writing. In 2005, I was very lucky. I submitted a writing sample to a startup and became an online journalist, specifically in music. I spent 5 years traveling North America and Europe with bands and writing about what it was like to be a musician. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. I'll give you an example. This is some of the photography I did while I was on the road. That's Henry Rollins from Black Flag, Jeff Rickley from Thursday, James Hetfield from Metallica. I had to spend 2 hours interviewing Metallica. I grew up as a metalhead. It was like one of the best experiences I've ever had. But the thing that this taught me was being a journalist and going from journalism to books is it taught me how to write fast. Because a day in the life of this meant I usually got up around 10, 11 a.m. Some of you are probably like, that sounds like a luxury. Hold on. I would get up, answer emails, deal with anything else I had to do. We usually got to the venue around 3 p.m. Probably around from 4 to 6 p.m. is when I would do interviews with the band members, either that band or maybe there was a touring band or a special guest that night or whoever I was assigned to interview. The show would start at 7. I would have to photograph anywhere between 3 and 4 bands, taking anywhere from about 2,500 to 4,000 photos. After the show, I would have to edit those photos down to 20 or so publishable ones, and then whatever thing I was assigned to write about that show, I would have to turn it in by 7 a.m. the next morning. And usually those pieces were about 1,500 to 2,000 words. So imagine every single day you have to write a 2,000 word essay. It's due at 7 in the morning, you go to sleep at 7 and you wake up at 10. So, you know what that meant? I had no time to have writer's block. You can't have writer's block when you have something due at 7 in the morning. You just can't. So one of the things that I'm very appreciative of is I learned how to just put one word after the other, even if they're not good words, even if they're terrible, and I know it's a trash fire, but just to keep moving. After working in journalism for 10 years, I got an idea for what I thought was a story. I hadn't written fiction in a long time. I started wondering if I was ever going to fulfill this dream, because truly the one dream I always had from when I was a kid was I just wanted my name on a book. To have a book out in the world with my name on it. So I got this idea in September of 2012. I realized I had one chance to accomplish it, so I started writing what would be Anger's a Gift. That first draft took me 17 months. So I worked on one project for 17 months. I found time in between my full-time job. I was living in Oakland, California at the time. I finished a working draft, and what I mean by that is a draft that I was ready to send out into the world in 2015, so almost 3 years later, after multiple versions. It took me 1.5 years to find a literary agent. If you're not familiar with what that is, you probably heard of an agent when you hear like professional sports players and musicians, they will have an agent. Well, those of us in the book world, a lot of us have agents too. These are the people who will go to all the publishing houses, take our work and be like, give us money so that you can publish this. I got an agent in January of 2017, so almost 5 years later, and this dude sold my book in 23 days, which that is very, very, very fast. I did not expect to. A lot of people are on, it's called submission, and a lot of people are on submission for sometimes years at a time. So my book, Anger's a Gift, was released May 22nd, 2018, almost 2 years ago. So this is the hardcover cover that's right here, and then the version that we have here is the paperback. So, Anger's a Gift. The actual book itself is about a bunch of teenagers in West Oakland, California, who are dealing with a high school that has decided to install metal detectors, and then one of them injures a student one day, and it's about the kids who decide that maybe they want to stage a protest to protest the existence of these metal detectors. So where did this come from? I love talking about where ideas come from because they never really come, for me at least, they never come from where you expect it. Anger's a Gift was born out of two things. One, a reaction to an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because I'm a giant nerd. And I'm such a petty Ravenclaw that I wrote a whole book in response to one episode. It is also my chance to talk about what it's like to be on the receiving end of police brutality multiple times in my life. In particular, there was one event in 2008 that I was actually a viral video. It's a very strange experience. You certainly ask me about it later. But I also wanted to write about a family that did not have connections to the police, because you see this a lot in very popular films and books about police brutality or issues with police violence. Is there's usually like a cousin or an uncle who has a connection to the police, and there's sort of like a liaison between them. But I did not have those when I had my issues with the Los Angeles Police Department. So I had no one to vouch on my behalf. I wanted to write about grief of losing a father. I lost my dad in 2006. I wanted to write about how love can be complicated by an unfair world. And then above all, I just wanted to write a book where queer people of color like myself were at the center of the narrative instead of the background characters. So that's a little bit about my writing. The last thing I want to talk about is what it's actually like to be an author, because people are like, what do you actually do all day? Do you just sit in your pajamas and play Mario Kart on your phone until 2 a.m. last night? Yes, I did. I'm trying to get to level 40, don't judge me. Mostly, if I'm not doing this, And this is actually my favorite part of being an author. I'm not gonna lie to you. I love getting to do events like this. If I am just home and I'm not traveling for events, my daily life is, the first thing I do is answer emails. If any of you are interested in any creative field, if you wanna be a musician, you wanna be a tattoo artist, you wanna be a poet, anything in those fields, get used to answering emails, because that's how everyone communicates. That's how you get jobs. That's how you get feedback. I get anywhere between 250 to, on some very hard days, 500 emails a day, and I have to go through all of them and figure out what I need to answer today versus what I can put off for a few days or a few weeks. I get promotional stuff. I am about to announce a new book in 2 days, and I am getting 1 billion emails a second from my new publisher. So sometimes it gets very intense. Excuse me. I also write every single day, and what I mean by writing is it doesn't mean I'm writing a new story all the time. So currently, right now, well, not right now because I'm obviously talking to all of you, but what I'm working on right now, any day now, the last round of edits for my next book drops, and I will have to drop everything and finish those in about a week. Yeah, that's right, edit an entire book in 7 days. I am working on the proposal for my 3rd YA because I would like my publisher to buy another book from me. I am also drafting a middle grade book, and I am editing about 7 short stories that all come out this year in different anthologies. So it's a lot of things. That means sometimes I'm plotting, I'm working on drafts, edits. Sometimes my routine is the same. Other days, new things crop up. And then the best part of it all is I get to travel. I get to go all around the world and speak to kids. I get to do book events, book festivals. I love it because I grew up super poor and we didn't get to travel. And it's really nice because someone else is paying for it. I accept that. These are some images from the last couple years of my life. That is V. Schwab. We actually have the same editor at Tor Books, Miriam Weinberg. These are my friends, the writer Cordova and Daniel Clayton. We share an office in Harlem in New York called Deadline City, where we write and tell each other really terrible jokes. I'm not gonna repeat them. So, here's the thing. I'm actually not supposed to tell anyone about this, so please don't put these on the internet because they actually haven't been announced. But my publisher's not in the room, so I'm gonna tell you all a secret. I have 2 books out in the next year and a half, and I want to tell you all about them. So again, this is your secret. I have a book out September 15th, 2020, called Each of Us a Desert. This is my follow-up to Anger's a Gift. If you liked Anger's a Gift and you read it, this book has nothing to do with it. So sorry about that. I'm probably never gonna write a sequel. Here's the thing, I grew up reading weird shit, and I love horror especially, and so I wrote a horror, magical, realism, fantasy book set in a world that is nothing but a desert. It follows a teenage girl as she copes with the magical power she was given as a child to take stories from the people in her village in order to cleanse them. But one day she takes a story from someone and learns that she may have been lied to about who she is and what her power means. It is a magical journey of discovery. I hope it gives all of you nightmares. I wrote some of the weirdest things I've ever written. I'm very excited about it. How many of you are familiar with a movie that came out about 15 years ago? Some of you probably weren't even born. I can't believe I just said that. Called The Village by M. Night Shyamalan. It's the best, worst movie of all time. I think it's a terrible movie, in particular because there is a twist and it happens 10 minutes before the end of the movie, and I think it is one of the worst writing decisions I've ever seen because that twist should have happened 20 minutes in, because that's when the movie got interesting, and then it's over. And basically, this is that. I give you a twist about 25% of the way through, and then I show you what is actually, this girl who lives in this village has never been beyond her village. She doesn't know what's beyond the fence. And I can't wait for you guys to find out what's beyond the fence, because it's real messed up. I have a book. This book is not going to be announced till on Thursday. So this book is young adult, which means it's aimed at kids about 14 to 18 years old, or actually probably like 12 to 18 years old. I have a middle grade book coming out in 2012. This is for 8 to 12-year-old kids. If you are familiar with Harry Potter, there's a thing called a room of requirement in those books. And it's this magical room that doesn't show up for a really long time until some of the students need it. So, look, J.K. Rowling has enough money, so I just stole this idea from her. Whatever. But I had this idea too because I was thinking about how much I needed a room like that when I was a kid, particularly growing up in a school where I did not feel safe, or I did not feel like I belonged. So I wrote this book called The Insiders about 3 12-year-old kids who all are having a difficult time at their respective schools, and they each discover a magical room that protects them and allows them to visit one another, except then one day the room stops letting them go home until they solve a problem at someone else's school. It is very wacky, it's a lot of fun. It's probably gonna make you cry, because I love having that power. None of you are ready. I think that's it. Isn't that it? It is it. Thank you, friend. So I'm gonna go back to this page, because it'll have like my social media and my websites. Every time I do a school visit, I put whatever meme I'm using in my author group chat the most. And it's currently New York, Baby Yoda. Those AirPods are the best detail. I can't get over it. Look how big his ear is to that earpod. Baby Yoda says dead ass all the time. All right, okay. It's time for questions, and if I don't see a hand, it's gonna get real awkward. Thank you. You were the one who clapped or cheered when I said I dropped out of college, aren't you? I'm gonna regret asking you a question. All right, go ahead. What episode of Buffy the Vampire, if you've seen Buffy, you should watch. Some of it doesn't hold up, but a lot of it does. It's called Seeing Red. And if you've not read my book, you will, and you know that episode, you will know exactly what's gonna happen in my book. So it's called Seeing Red. There's a hand back here in the reddish sweater. Yeah, you. Yeah. I'm blind. I can't see. Go ahead. If you went to New York, what would be the best place to go? Not Times Square. Wait, no, I take that back. Times Square at 3 in the morning is actually pretty cool because all the lights are up and there's no one there. It's a cesspit. Don't go to Times Square. So if I'm going to recommend you one place to go in, oh my God. Okay, I'm going to give you two. One is the Met, which is this giant art museum that's free. They will tell you you have to pay, but you don't. Just walk in and just be like, they'll be like, how much are you going to pay? And say $0, and they give you a sticker. It's pretty cool. Most of the New York museums are free, and it's donation only. So just say I'm donating $0. You'll feel like an asshole, but like it's fine. Rich people are paying for it. So go to the Met because it'll blow your mind. And then number two, there is a restaurant at the Columbus Circle station on the MTA. It's where the 1, the A, and the C, and the B and the D all intersect, and they serve chicken bites in a waffle cone. And it is the best single meal you will ever have in your entire life. You're welcome. Okay. And go visit Baby Yoda in the Bronx. All right. Way in the back up there. Which my biological ones or my adoptive one?
You said the ones that threw you out.
Well, so I don't mean to make a joke of this, but my dad's dead, so I can't keep in contact with him. Sorry. It was slightly fun. He's my dad. I get to make fun of him. All right. No. My. Oh boy. So sometimes people read Anger's a Gift and they really like the mom character in it, and they're like, "Is that based on your mom?" And I'm like, no, not at all, because she's really nice and supportive. No, I haven't. My mom hasn't spoken to me in like 3 years. I don't think she just vibes with this whole thing. Which I don't know. I'm pretty great. Why wouldn't you want to be friends with me? So no, not really. Which I'm okay with because I'm a real big fan of found family, and I have a family in New York. I have a family in Los Angeles, and they take care of me. But no, not all. Yeah. In the back, white sleeve.
What's the name of your viral video?
Ask me, come up after. I actually have a really good one that you can look up called Mark Reads Twilight, where I didn't know what Twilight was, and someone gave me a bunch of passages to read, and you get to watch me have an existential breakdown. It's pretty great. Way in the back, people are pointing at you, so your question must be real good or real awful. I'm excited. All right, go ahead.
So you being Latinx and being like brought into the culture, were you able to connect to your Latinx?
Whoa, you did have a good question. So were you able to connect to your Latinx roots being adopted? Yes and no. I think this sort of answers your question too about why I don't really keep in contact with my mom. Here's an awkward reality. My mom is a mega giant racist. like just a super huge racist. And there's this mistaken identity that if you marry a person of color, you have kids who are not white, that absolves you of your racism and you're not racist. The first person I heard use a racial slur against me was my mom. She believed that she was saving me and my twin brother from a life of crime by adopting us. Like, she was very much into this idea that we were gonna be saved. It was like a mission from God to adopt us, which is not a cool thing to have your parent tell you. And I didn't find out until I was in my 20s, but I was like, maybe you should have kept that to yourself. That's really awkward. So my mom was not into me and my brother finding our roots, but the thing is, we were in foster care and spoken to in Spanish until we were adopted. And then when we moved to Southern California, we became fluent in Spanish because that's what we were raised in foster care. I lost the ability to speak Spanish probably around like 20, 25. I just stopped doing it, just out of habit. I am relearning it again. The other thing that makes it hard is I know who my biological mom is. I met her once, and I've never met my biological father. He's somewhere in Mexico. I know he's Guatemalan and El Salvadorian, but that's why I also use the word Latinx. Because people are like, why don't you call yourself Salvadorian? Why don't you call yourself Mexican? Why don't you call yourself Guatemalan? And I'm like, well, I might have those parts in me that may have made up who I am, but I don't have that experience. I didn't live growing up in that culture. So I exist in a very weird space, but I really like that word Latinx because I feel like it's a very easy way to describe who I am. It's like a very nice umbrella term. I am this weird hodgepodge of like Central American culture, because that's what I grew up in Southern California. Most of my friends were immigrants from Central America. So those are the words that I know, the food that I know. And now living in New York, I'm starting to pick up like the Puerto Rican stuff, the Dominican stuff. Like, boy, they speak real fast too. And they don't have consonants in any of their words. It's very, very hard. I remember I lived in Washington Heights when I moved to New York, and Washington Heights is basically the Dominican Republic Part 2. And I was pretty good with my Spanish, and people would start talking to me, and they speak so fast, and they have so many different slang words that I had to relearn Spanish in a completely new way. So yes, I'm trying. I think writing is helping. My next book, The Fantasy, is based on a lot of these cultures that I grew up with, but it's in a fantasy book. So yeah, I think that's an answer to your question. That was a really good question. We'll go right here, the Blackhawks. Did you say, what are my pronouns? I use he and they. Well, that's a cool question. Y'all are great. I'm usually used to like, first question is like, what's that tattoo on your neck? Like, it's usually like the first thing people ask. Or like, who's the most famous person you ever met? Like, it's Beyonce, by the way. She's perfect. You're being pointed at. I was gonna say glasses. We'll do both of you back to back, but we'll go here in the darker jacket first. God damn it. That's my own fault. I'm a huge fan of this band from Los Angeles called Bad Religion. My older sister introduced me to them when I was 8 years old. They have completely redefined my life. They introduced me to politics. They introduced me to social issues. They introduced me to punk rock. I have sort of a split taste in music. I like things very fast and aggressive, and then I like things that are super poppy and catchy. And then in between, I grew up listening to a lot of like West Coast hip hop and R&B. So I have a lot of music tattoos. So when I was 20 years old, I got my two favorite bands at the time were Bad Religion and Black Flag. And so primarily I love Bad Religion. I also grew up in a cult, a Christian cult, which is what my third YA book is about. And I think the tattoo is largely a reaction to that of like, I think about that version of Christianity and I don't want anything to do with it. I do get people who ask me like, do you hate Jesus? I'm like, no, I don't. They're like, do you hate me? And I'm like, I don't know who you are. Sir, this is a Wendy's. Like, like I'm just like, I don't work at Wendy's, sorry. Anyway, most of my friends are religious. I love it. I go to church, not for me, I go for them because I want to support them. I don't really believe in anything. But I don't know, it's a cool tattoo. I like Bad Religion a lot. You should listen to Bad Religion, they're great. All right, you had a question.
What's the tattoo on your arm?
Which arm? This one? Both my arms. What are all your tattoos? So the tattoo on my right arm is a Star Wars sleeve. I grew up watching Star Wars with my dad, and when my dad passed away, I wanted to get a memorial tattoo that you wouldn't know was a memorial tattoo. So like I have like the Death Star on my upper arm. which, by the way, my tattoo artist changed careers and never finished it, so now I get to say that this Death Star is not operational. Yeah, I'm a nerd. Bully me. Okay, anyway, I have mostly music tattoos. I do have 2 book tattoos. This is The Last Sentence of the Stranger by Albert Camus, which is one of my favorite books. And then, was that a yes, you recognize it, or yes, you like it?
Yes, they love it.
Oh, all right, cool. I guess. So the things everyone's are into is The Stranger and me dropping out of college. Cool, all right, good to know that. I will say that the other book tattoo I have is my favorite book when I was a kid was the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books. And I have 2 extremely realistic tattoos from that book on my leg. So, and mostly music stuff. I'm not gonna, oh man, this is chaos. Oh, there's so many questions out. Okay. That's not gonna work, don't do that. No, I'm gonna ignore you. Okay, no, I'm not. I'll come back to you, you'll be second up there. Return of the Jedi, because the most underrated thing in all of the Star Wars movies are the Ewoks. So, the end. All right. Actually, it is Return of the Jedi, though. Okay, way in the back.
Yeah, you write a lot about dark material, like about teenagers. And so, do you think the increase in media, like about teenage depression, is a result of the increase, or do you think it causes the increase?
Hey, Mark, can you write a PhD dissertation in the next 60 seconds? I don't believe that I say us because I'm thinking of like a bunch of the other of my fellow young adult authors who write about this sort of stuff. I wrote about depression and anxiety and PTSD in this book because I didn't have anyone to help me with it when I was a kid. And I didn't write it as a way of like, this is gonna be a real bad joke, but I'm gonna do it anyway. It's not like touching anger as a gift is gonna give you depression cooties. Like, you know, I don't think about it like someone's gonna read this and then suddenly they get depression from reading it. I think what is happening, and I think this is the case for more than just that, it's that so many of us didn't have language, and then someone gives you a book that has language, and you suddenly realize the thing you were feeling is the thing other people were feeling. So I think where this is happening is that because there's just so much more content online, in books or whatnot, is that people have the language to talk about it. I also think, I'm just gonna throw this out here, the world is an unending trash fire right now, so I think most of us are pretty depressed. Like, I think that's the other part. Like, maybe if like climate change isn't gonna end us in 20 years, we wouldn't be so depressed. Maybe? No? Okay, all right, just me. I have so much anxiety. All right, we're gonna go right here in the front. I heard one of those words. Can you say that again?
Yay, 2020.
We're gonna move to another question over here. No, I don't know. I haven't figured out. I don't know yet. I'll figure out who I'm voting for. I don't know. I'm not Yang Gang though. I'm not Yang Gang. It's either Sanders or Warren at this point. I mean, ideally, if I could vote for who I wanted, it would be Beyonce and Lizzo 2020. Thank you. God. I'm just so tired of all these. Okay, anyway. I don't know. Bring it down. And I'm gonna choose, wait, what time is it? How much time we got? 10 minutes, oh sweet. More chaos. So we're gonna go to this side. We're gonna choose you in the gray with the head, do you have headphones around here? Yes.
My question is, how do you consistently keep coming up with jokes that are so good and yet so bad?
Man, it's like my secret talent. How do I? Okay, so actually this is a cool question that's gonna lead into a writing, like talking about craft. So when I did my first school visit ever, and I wanna say it was in Naperville, so it wasn't like super far from here, but it was like one of these suburbs. A bunch of kids read, like this was a school visit where all the kids had read my book. And so I do my little presentation that was a little different than this, but like this is the whole vibe of me. Like this version you're getting is exactly how I'm like with all my friends. I don't create like a persona to be an author. This is how ridiculous I am all the time. So I do my thing and we're doing questions with all these kids and one of them raises their hand and she's like, yo, you're mad funny. Why is your book so sad? I was like, sorry, I don't, what? And she was like, it's like weird to read your book because I thought you would be different in person. Like I thought you would just be like this sad goth. And I was like, okay, sure. But I get it. Like it is not an easy book. There's not a whole lot of jokes in Anger is a Gift. There's a few really good ones that I'm proud of, but there's not. And she's like, I would read a book the way you talk. And I want you to know, literally on my plane ride home the next day, I thought of an idea for a book where I wanted to do this in book form. And that's this proposal I'm working on for my third YA book. It's about a real dark subject, which is like, what if your parents are in a cult? But I know, right for a comedy, everyone. I don't know, I think a lot of my persona and how I act is because I was not this person in high school until about probably like the last year of high school. I was very shy. I was not outgoing. I didn't have a lot of friends, and it wasn't actually until I got kicked out of my house and then started being able to, like, you have to understand, I grew up in such a restrictive environment. The first night I spent the night at another human being's house was the day I was kicked out. I was not allowed to have friends over. I was not allowed to use the internet. I was not allowed to use the telephone. I had never used the telephone until I was 17 years old. So I lived in such a restrictive environment that once I was free of that, I became this. And I sort of came out of my shell, and I don't know, the world's terrible. I just like dumb jokes. They're pretty great. Thank you. I have so many more of them. All right, we're gonna go here. We're gonna do with the sunflower on the, I'm gonna ignore what's happening over there. Yes. To travel around with? Favorite musician or music group to travel around with? I'm gonna say all of the old Fueled by Ramen bands, so Panic at the Disco, Paramore, Fall Out Boy. All of the people in those bands are incredible people. If there's, maybe I shouldn't make this joke. If there was a race war tomorrow, I would only save Hayley Williams from Paramore. I love her, she's a queen. She's one of the nicest, most respectful, brilliant human beings on the planet. I think one of the things that was really cool about being a music journalist is I would say 99% of the time the people in all these bands and these musicians are excellent people who might be like a little distant at first because like having fame is weird. It's so like it would be weird to see people chase after them, to see the like, I got to see like the other side of it is like all of the protections they have in place to keep themselves safe. But once all of them let their guard down, they're just the best people. I'll tell you who the worst is. Katy Perry. Yeah, if she died tomorrow, I'd throw a party. I hate her. Look, maybe she got better. I had to spend 5 days with her in 2009, and it was a waking nightmare. She was a horrible, she would not call me by my name. She would say, "Get that thing out of here." Yeah, again. She dies today, we're having a party tomorrow. I'll come back here. Writers Week, Katy Perry death party. Hey, teachers running this. I've gone so far off track. We're gonna do one more question. So who has the best question? He stood up. Or they stood up, I don't know the pronouns. You stood up. Boy, hold on. Give them the space to ask their question. I'm probably gonna regret doing that, but okay, cool. What's up?
Xbox or PS4?
Right now, I mean, I own both. I mostly play the PS4. Of the two of them, hold on. The actual answer is the Switch. Because I've spent the last year of my life, and I'm very thankful for this, about a year ago, actually almost a year to the day, it was January I want to say the 24th or 25th of last year, I got a call from the American Library Association. And if you look, I'm going to go back real quickly. I can just show you on the book. There's this cool little sticker on the front, this blue sticker. It's called the Schneider Family Book Award. It is an award for excellence in depicting disability in a young adult book. And I got a call from the American Library Association, and they said, "You won this award, and it's a huge deal, and you also get $5,000 for it." That day, about a day later, they announced it at this event called Midwinter, ALA Midwinter, which just happened 2 days ago. So a bunch of people just got announced awards yesterday. The day that was announced, I sold more copies of that book than I did all of 2018. And my career exploded. And I was home for 2 months of 2019. Which is amazing. Like, that's the thing you dream of. Like, that's the coolest thing. Because of that, the Switch was with me. I prefer PS4. Like, I have been waiting. I have a copy. It's unopened because I just haven't had time to play it of Borderlands 3. I'm obsessed with the Borderlands games. I love them so much, I haven't even had a chance to play it. So the video game console I have with me the most is the Switch. That was a good question, because I got to talk about books. See, I'm smart. Yo! No, hold on. Real quick, I'll come over and answer this, but I just want to say, I was really nervous about this. Super nervous, and I'm going to be extremely real with all of you. Sorry if I make you cry. I haven't done an event in 2 months. My ex-partner died last month, and I canceled all my events for the last 2 months, and I have been mortified to do an event. And I didn't know that I could get through one. So thank you all for being so nice and kind. And I did it, and I've been so nervous these past couple weeks. Yeah, you're awesome. Thank you.
If you want to get a book by Mark Oshiro, they're on sale on stage here, buttons as well. Let's hear it one more time for Mark Oshiro.